Hello, welcome to Craig Loves to Crochet. My name is Tonya and this is Abby. Thank you, Abby, for modelling my scarf and hat. So today we're going to be I'm going to show you how to make this lovely scarf. It's called the Broomstick Lace or Peacock Eye Stitch Fringed Scarf. And you might be able to see that Abby is also wearing my new design, which is the Peacock Eye Stitch or the Broomstick Lace beanie, which I'm also doing a tutorial on. I think I've probably perfected it now. So just to zoom in a wee bit so you can see. So as you can see, it's an absolutely gorgeous scarf, and I've designed this lovely little fringe to go on it. It's very easy to make and quite quick to make up because of the nature of the stitch. So without further hesitation, let's go and make this tutorial. Let's have a look at what we'll need for this project then. The yarn that I'm using for this project is called Creative Reflection yarn. This is a 50-gram ball, and that's all you'll need for this project because of the nature of the stitch. And the colour is called Party 001. You can get them in lots of different colours, but I love this beautiful sort of cerise pink colour. The yarn is quite a fine yarn, so if you're wanting to use an alternative, I would probably go for like the single knit yarn rather than the double knit just for this project. And the reason for that is just because of the nature of the stitch, it being quite lacy, it really brings out the stitch if you use a finer yarn for this project. The crochet needle that we're going to be using is a number 5, which is quite unusual for using for such a fine yarn. But again, for the nature of this stitch, it really brings out the qualities and the pattern of this stitch. So we're using a number 5 crochet needle. As you'll already know if you've watched my other tutorials on how to create the peacock eye stitch, you will need some kind of dowel or needle. I like to use this lovely lightweight plastic knitting needle, and this one that I'm using is a 20mm needles, but you can choose anything really, and we've discussed that in previous tutorials. Need a pair of scissors for cutting our yarn, and I always, as anybody who watches my tutorials, always use a thimble and a yarn needle just for tying in the ends. So let's get started on our project. Right, it's exciting to be using a new sort of yarn. I love using different types of yarns. So to start the project, we start off by creating our chain. So we need to chain 40 stitches, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'll see you at the end. Right, so we have our 40 chain. Now we're going to crochet our foundation row, and I'm going to do single crochets for this. So we need to chain 1, and then we're going to go into the first stitch to create our single crochet foundation. So I like to go into the two loops rather than the one, and this creates a really solid foundation row, makes it lovely and neat. It's ideal for using for this yarn as well, or any yarn really, but it really gives a lovely neat edge. So into each loop we're going to go, just creating our foundation row, and as you can see, it's really starting to work up a nice neat edge, which is exactly what you need, a good definition when you're using this kind of yarn. So I'll see you at the end when I've finished my foundation row. Right, I've finished my foundation chain. As you can see, it's gorgeous, lovely and solid, nice and neat. It's ideal for what we want to do next, which is pulling all our loops through for the beginning of our peacock eye stitch, this gorgeous pattern. Now I'm assuming that you already know how to do this, and if you don't, then I have a crochet tutorial which I'll put the links down below for you to see. Just to refresh your memory, this loop here above the counts as our first loop, and we have 40 single crochets all along, so we need 40 loops, so we're going to be working in multiples of 5. When we're pulling our loops through, for the purpose of this pattern, we're going to be going through the 2 loops at the top of each of the single crochet stitches. So I'll just zoom in to show you. So we're going to be going into these 2 loops here, each one all the way along. So let's get started with that. I'll start you off the first few and then I'll meet you at the end. Right, so with our large needle, we're going to put our first loop on the end of our needle. We're going to catch hold of our yarn. We don't go through this loop here, this very first one here, because this is our first, we've already got our loop on for that one, so we missed that one, and we're going to go into the 2 loops of this stitch here, so into there, into those 2 loops, and we're going to pull up our yarn. So tucking our needle under our arm or wherever you find it the most comfortable, picking up our yarn, pulling it through the top of the loop and popping it on top of our needle. I'll show you again just to refresh. So into the 2 loops of our single crochet, like so, picking up our yarn, pulling it through the 2 loops and then putting it on our needle. Okay, and then just make sure we pull our stitches down. Right, so I'm going to pick up the rest of my loops, so we'll have 40 loops right to the end on our needle. Right, so I have my 40 loops on my needle. Now, as per the tutorial, I need to take my loops off the needle and put my needle aside. So we'll be working on these loops now. Now don't worry, as I've said time and again, not to worry about this because this is not going to come undone. What we do need to do is we need to pick up, because we're working multiples of 5, we need to pick up 5 loops on our hook. So we've got 5 loops here, and we need to catch hold of my yarn. So we just hold it nice and lightly, the other loops in our hand here. We're not going to distort or anything. We need to pull it nice and taut, like so. We need to catch hold of our yarn and pull through all 5 loops and create a single crochet. Now, because this is the first cluster, we need to chain 2, because we're going to be working in a double crochet stitch now into these 5 loops, or we call a treble in UK terms. So pick up our yarn, we're going to create a double crochet. So this is creating our first cluster, our first peacock eye. So into the center here of our 5 loops, we're just going to stitch 5 or 4 more double crochets, because the chain counts as our first double crochet. This ball of wool, the yarn doesn't come from the middle, so I have to keep pulling it. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 more, and that makes 5. Right, so that's our first cluster. So we move along, we pick up the next 5 loops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on our crochet hook. Pull them nice and taut so we're getting a good even pattern, good even cluster. Pulling our yarn through and creating a single crochet, and that connects the 2 sets of clusters. And again, we're going to double crochet, this time 5 double crochets again into here. We don't need to chain this time. So 1, 2, into the cluster, 3. I'm assuming that you know how to do this because you've watched the tutorial, but if you want a refresher, the link's down below. Just ruffling my yarn a little bit. I don't know about you, but I prefer it when it comes from, the yarn comes from the middle of the ball. Okay, so now we have our two peacock eye stitches on, so our clusters. Okay, so we're going to do that all the way along until we come to the end, and I'll see you at the end when we've got all of our clusters done. So we're doing sets of 5, multiples of 5, so keep picking up your 5 loops and crocheting in your 5 double crochets into the 5 loop cluster. We're going to continue with these 2 rows, the 2 rows that form the pattern, for another 37 times. Well, that's the length that I've done for my scarf. You can make yours as short or as longer as you want, but for the scarf I've completed these 2 rows another 37 times. So when you've done that, we'll come back and we'll see where we go from there. Right, I've finished my 37 rows, and I've actually finished off at the end here doing just a row of double crochet all the way along, and then I've fastened off. So now we need to incorporate our fringe onto each end of the scarf. I've actually done the first end here, so if you can see that I've already put the fringes on this end of the scarf, and I'm going to show you how to measure your yarn and then secure your fringe onto your scarf to make it have this gorgeous sort of almost 70s, 60s, 70s look fringed effect. Right, okay, so each piece of fringe, each piece of yarn for my fringe is going to be 7 inches or 8 centimeters long. So I've measured them here. I've already cut these ones to the right size, so approximately 7 inches, or if you work in centimeters, about 8 centimeters long. So what we do is we take our yarn. Let's pop my tape measure down for a moment. Take our yarn. Where's the end? Here we are. And we just measure our yarn like so, 7 centimeters. And what I normally do then is I double my yarn like this, so I've got like a double length, so basically 14 inches, and I cut it like so. Now I need 8 pieces lengths of 7 centimeters, so basically there's 2 lengths here because we're going to cut these in half. So we need another 4, so we'll just measure another 4, so one, two, let's have a look. Don't have to be super accurate because we're going to trim it anyway. 3, and one more, make 4 of the super long lengths, and then basically when we fold them in half, so there's my 4, then what we'll do is we'll fold these in half, cut down the middle, and basically we have our 8 pieces of 7-inch yarn. Okay, right, so we need 14 sets of 8 pieces of 7-inch 8 centimeter pieces of yarn. So I've got one here, so that's 2. So when I've got my 14 sets, then we'll take it to the next stage and we'll look how we put our fringe on and assemble it onto our scarf. Now I've finished doing cutting all the lengths for the fringe from the other side of my scarf, but just a couple of things of note before we start, and that is to make sure that your scarf looks as neat as possible, and that the fringe is put on in the correct format. So basically what I've done is I have put them all on in exactly the same way, and I'll show you how to do that, because sometimes if you put them on in different ways, it looks slightly odd. So as you can see, they're all on the right side, so I've checked the other side of my scarf, and this is going to be the front side of my scarf. So I've checked that first. So you need to make sure that you have the front side facing you, so the part that you're going to wear facing you. The second thing to note is that when you're actually putting the fringe on, can you see these bands here, these wee little bands across here? Well, they look different on the other side. Let me just show you. So as you can see, there's a slight difference. So these have like two little sort of, I don't know what you would call those, like little nodules on this side. That's the incorrect side, and on this side they're lovely and neat with the little bands going across. And if you're not careful, if you don't put them on correctly, you'll have sort of variations of bands and then little nodules on the other side, all on the side that you want. So we don't want to do that. The other thing of note is that for each fringe part, little fringe that I've put on, I've actually left 2 stitches, and I'll show you how to do that. So I've put a fringe on, 2 stitches, put another fringe on, 2 stitches, put another fringe on, and so on. So they're equally spread across the bottom of the scarf. So let's have a little look at how we're going to put these fringes on. Let me just move that part away. So this is the ends that I need to do now. So I'm going to start at this end first. So we've already made our strands of yarn. We need to fold them in half, so like so. Pick up our, let me just zoom in a wee bit so you can see a really good shot of what I'm actually doing. Okay, so we can see where the stitches are. These are all double crochets across here just to make a nice finish. So this is the front bit here. Sorry, can't see there. So this bit here is the front. What we're going to do is we're going to turn it over just for a second and have a little look. And this we need to put is our first stitch here. So we're going to put our first fringe on the corner here into this stitch. Now it doesn't matter if you're not quite sure exactly where to put it, because it really isn't going to make an awful lot of difference as long as you spread them out in the format that I've just shown you. So we're going to put our hook through here, just through the top 2 stitches or the 2 loops of the double crochet, and you need to put the hook from back to front. So the hook goes, if we see this as the front here, this bit here is the front, we're going to turn that over and we're going to put our hook from back to front, and that gives us, do you remember when I was saying this lovely little bit here, the little piece of neat band across the fringe. Okay, so you take hold of your yarn, and you're going to pull all of those strands for this fringe all the way through like so. Now you're going to take your hook out, place it down, and I just generally place my fingers in between this little loop, pick hold of the ends of the fringe, and then you're going to give it a wee tug, and that is the first piece of fringe on at the end. Now then, what we're going to do now is we're going to count 2 stitches along. So 1, 2, and we're going to go into this second one here again, back to front. Take hold of our, haven't even folded this one up, that wasn't very good, was it? So fold it in half and pull it through like so. Put our crochet hook down, and then just so we've got a little loop there, and then pull our fringe through like so, and then pull it so it's a neat. You don't have to pull it really tight, because that would be way too much. But so we have our second fringe there. Now if you wanted to do the spacing differently, then by all means, this is just a guide really. So I'm going to zoom out a wee bit now so you can see the rest. So we're going to count again. 1, 2, hook in, get another strand, fold it in half. I mean, it's really easy. It's certainly not rocket science, I have to say. And then, but how effective it is when it's done properly and neatly. There you go. So we've got 3 on now. We're going to continue along to the end. So 1, 2, and the second one there, with our little fringes until we've got to the end. And then really it's just about trimming those ends up to your specified or your length that you like them. So I'm going to carry on putting these on right to the end, and I'll catch up with you at the end when that bit's finished. Right, so I finished the fringe. Now we need to give our fringe a little trim, basically. And as you can see, there are some bits that are a little bit more uneven than others. Now, I'm not professing to be a very good hairdresser or trimmer, and you may think of a different way of doing it than me, but the way that I kind of do it is just to sort of go along and just equal up the ends a wee bit. I would say that any hairdressers will be probably appalled at this technique. However, it's the one that seems to work just okay for me. Just to make sure that it's not too, yes, they seem to be equal. I'll just take the last bit off at this end. These ones seem a lot longer than the other ends. And there you have it. Now, you might find a much better idea than me of doing that, and if you do, I would be so grateful if you could share it with me. Right, so we have our gorgeous scarf completed. It is just the most beautiful scarf. I absolutely love it. It looks so decadent on, I have to say, and this yarn is really nice. But with the fringe, I just think it is totally beautiful. I hope you've enjoyed my tutorial. I would really like to see your scarves and the end results. I have a wonderful community Facebook page called Craig Loves to Crochet, and you can find me on www.facebook.com/Craig Loves to Crochet. I'll put the link down below. And we really do have a great time on the page. It's really nice to sort of share our ideas and get some inspiration and so on. So there is an end of another tutorial. I will be doing the hat to match this. I have a lovely hat design which has taken me a little longer than I anticipated, but now it's finished and I've managed to get the shape just right and all the measurements for that. So I hope you've enjoyed doing this, and I hope you enjoy even more doing the hat to match, which is like a beanie, but I've also made a slouchy version and also a bit of a vintage kind of version as well to set off this lovely scarf. So thank you very much. Please leave your comments at the bottom if you have any. I'd love to hear from you. So toodle pip from me. Bye bye.